Ukrainians feel very passionate about the revolutions due to the parallels we have, and of course we are living in the time when you see the results of it, what had failed, and in particularly in case of Egypt, it's already 5 years. That is the time to assess. That's really, you can see what went right, what went wrong, what the society had reached, what is the counter-revolution. So how would you describe the state of economy, the state of the political system of Egypt after those 5 years, the situation with the civil society? There are broad questions, but maybe you would have a general overview would give it.
Well, there's a lot of questions. 5 years is medium-term assessment. I mean, if you want to assess a revolution, 10 to 20 years is when you get the bigger picture. But 5 years, you can start assessing how the direction or start projecting where things are going. There have been things that we gained and things that we've lost in the past 5 years. But people say your revolution failed. I argue that if you take what the current government is doing, a crackdown on the media, shutdown of 27 independent media outlets, the imprisonment of over 70,000 people in 3 years, a new NGO law to more or less contain the NGOs and the civil society and make it very hard for them to operate. So all of those are like severe and harsh measures, and that's only a sign that the main establishment fears the civil society, fears independent media, and that is in itself a success. Well, how sustainable is that situation? I don't think it is sustainable, because after a while, I mean, Egypt is not North Korea and can never be North Korea in that sense. So I think we have gained a lot of things, but we've also lost a lot of other things. Economically, Egypt is in such an economic turmoil that it might actually induce a third wave to the revolution. We're currently, when the revolution took place in 2011, Egypt had an international or external debt of close to 35 billion US dollar. Now it's 70 billion US dollar or 75 billion US dollar. We had an internal debt that was around close to 1 trillion. Now it's 2.4 trillion. So it doubled. So, and then we devaluated the Egyptian pound and the dollar jumped to double its worth before the devaluation in November. So people woke up losing 50% of their savings, and now everything has doubled and they cannot make ends meet. And they've lifted subsidies on energy, and they will further lift more subsidies on energy and gas. So people will inevitably put in such a position that they'll be forced to go out on the streets again.
Speaking about the civil society, there was unprecedented arrests. So how many people are really behind the bars? And in what stage, how you describe the stage of the civil society in Ukraine? You do have a different people. Some have joined government, some failed, some are now fierce opponent of the government. They, let's say, helped to be in power because of the Ukrainian revolution.
Yeah.
But there are also a lot of smear campaigns against the activists. So what is the Egyptian experience?
Yeah. Well, it seems there are manuals for revolutionists and anti-revolutionists. So everyone is following the same pattern, more or less. Those who made the revolution now are being demonized, smear campaigns, sometimes imprisonment, and there's always creating of a distrust in the media, so that the public would always doubt those activists as agents of the West, as always everywhere. So again, this has definitely been a challenge and issue for civil society and civil society actors and change makers. But people have stood their ground. But definitely there are, I mean, to be specific, to have a specific number of people behind bars, it's not that easy, but we're talking about above definitely 40,000, of which in 2013 alone, 17,000 people were tortured in prison.
the interesting thing is there when you've just mentioned this kind of the playbooks for revolutionaries and anti-revolutionaries. So what kind of these smear campaigns are? What is there? What are really these practical challenges this civil society has? Because that's where you can really relate.
Well, there are many independent websites and media outlets that gained a lot of traction and attention in the past couple of years, such as Mada Masr, trying to do investigative reporting, which was not very prevalent before that. We're talking about professional level of investigative journalism, and they've had major achievements and successes, especially when it comes to accountability, the role of the military in the economy, and what's happening in Sinai, the war on terrorism and all that, and all the violations of human rights. So it's been a challenge for the government, and they've cracked down on them. They just took off 27 different media outlets, of which Madamas was part of those that were taken off the air. But again, the smear campaigns are non-stop. You've got the state media and you've got private media that more or less is a lackey to the state media or to the government, the main establishment. And they continuously propagate smear campaigns against activists and independent media, and it's ongoing. Nevertheless, now people understand 5 years later on that those people are just lackeys, they're marionettes of the regime, so people lost trust in them as well.
But how does it work? We found a lot of, why I'm so interested to ask. You sometimes see the details which are not still in your place or on some other place, and then you find out that it appears. So that is why I remember talking to the people like Asma Mahfouz. They were speaking about the fake social media web pages.
Yes.
Creating the totally absurd accusation, or for instance, this Egyptian blogger Wael Abbas, he would say that he would be blamed to be the agent of Mossad, of KGB, of CIA at the same time.
Yeah.
So there were other things as well. There would be some fragmentation, and at the first stage the activists would be they would argue among themselves, and that would create this division which would be later misused.
Very true. Well, we definitely have internal challenges. It's not that we're victims altogether. There are responsibilities. The political scene, the liberals, we have pseudo-liberals really in Egypt. Those are liberals who once the narrative was not convenient for them, the political scene, they sided with the military and joined forces with the military coup. So they're not really liberals, they're pseudo-liberals. And then you've got a very fragmented liberal scene and a fragmented socialist scene. So the political realm of dissidence is very fragmented. We can't get our act straight, and we have not provided a plausible alternative narrative to what's going on, something that the public can buy into. This is a challenge. Again, back to the smear campaigns, this is normal, this is standard. Immediately, once you want to change the status quo and the main establishment, you're immediately accused of being an agent of the West, and that this is all a conspiracy. And they play on populist rhetoric and discourse that, they play the ultra-nationalistic tunes, that this is an existential threat against our identity and who we are. Those people want to change the way we live, and they want to introduce concepts that are alien from us, all of that.
So how the international geopolitical situation influences the situation on the ground in Egypt? You have this squeeze of the freedoms, very strong, and it's very obvious it takes place but you have the good relations with the US, with the current head of Egypt, Sisi, who control the military. So can you go in details, how the international partners would be the players? How do they help the society, and maybe if they don't?
There's no easy way to answer that question, but the situation is very fluid. With the previous administration, U.S. administration, Egypt had a tense relationship in 2013 with the U.S., Germany, the U.K., Italy, and others. Some of those situations were a little bit, has changed a little bit, specifically the U.S., and even under the Obama administration, but even more so now, President Trump and Sisi are having a bromance, and Trump says that he finds that Sisi's leadership is exemplary and that he wish he would be in the same position like Sisi. On the other hand, you find Sisi having good relationship with Putin as well, and he's got friendships with other populist totalitarian leaders. At that point, what can really the West, for instance, do? You've got Germany, who had had put an embargo on selling weapons to Egypt. You've got Italy doing the same thing for a long time, and definitely the UK. There's the carrot stick thing. It doesn't always work because at the end of the day, those countries have stake in Egypt and Egyptian economy and trade, so they also can be under pressure and hurt their own interests. So on the government level, they're always interested in maintaining certain degree of relationships.
There is a time we can already analyze, we discussed the civil society, but what exactly were the tools that the current government coming with the popular coup? There was a very interesting situation when the Sisi had come during the coup, but which was supported by millions of people. At least that's what you could prove at that moment. So how they managed to, to take control over everything through the, how more or less the old system, what were these tools the old system used to be back on power, pretending to be, reinvent themselves, playing with the activists?
Well, if you take what happened since 2011 and now, you'll find that the military rule in Egypt since 2011, they for 18 months the military council took over the presidency, and they've created a situation where people had started disbelieving in the revolution because they made things worse for Egyptians. So it was a collective punishment. You want to change, here's what you get when you change. And then, so people, and they played on people's sentiments and need for security and stability. The word stability has been used on and on and on through the past 6 years by the different regimes that came in. And people are always running after that mirage, believing that this or that group will bring stability, not really understanding that stability will only come when everyone is on the table discussing the future together, and without excluding anyone. The real changes has not happened. On the contrary, the police became from bad to worse. The military has tightened its grip over the economy, so the public sphere is shut down. So it's a very challenging position.
What do you think you would have, or you could have done differently within these 5 years?
I would say we were very naive and romantic and idealistic at the beginning of the revolution. We did not have enough political experience because there was no political sphere. So many of us were in the kumbaya attitude and mood all the time, and that we were not pragmatic enough, we're not practical enough. We didn't understand that there are, within the broader realm of the revolution, there are people with their own agendas that they bring onto the table. So not accommodating, excluding, and sometimes pushing out, overpowering. The dynamics did not really help. But I don't think there would have been any other way, given all we were in, not having those experiences, not knowing how to deal with the mainstream establishment and the popular demands. So I think we've learned so much. This was actually necessary. All those mistakes were necessary. Perhaps because of all those shortcomings, we might have a better chance in the future because we've learned, hopefully we've learned from our mistakes.